All right, there we go. So Matt's been on the show before, and it's always to talk basketball or Giants. So that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Mike's on,
Or Yankees versus Blue Jays live reaction 3 years ago.
bro. I used to do just random Yankee games, summer reactions. I don't know who that content was for. So
This one got 58 views. I go, who's the 58 people watching that?
yeah, bro. Wait, you talking about this video or?
No, the Yankees versus Blue Jays reaction.
Oh yeah, dude.
That
Somehow
was-
like they're like my most viewed videos.
yeah,
Like
it was a 3-hour stream.
yeah. Yo, there was one where it was just some random like Jets Bucks like shitter game, and it has like 2,000 views. I was like, who the fuck is watching this shit?
That's funny.
Anyways, yeah. So I'm gonna try to set the stage here for the lottery. So
Yeah.
trade happens in February.
Yeah, sounds right.
Very interesting trade.
Yeah, biggest
Luka
trade in
Doncic
NBA
traded
history.
for absolutely nothing. You know, you try to do this trade in 2K, it's not going through.
No.
Anthony Davis, like old ass Anthony Davis for a first rounder, and
Max
the other
Christie.
kid's pretty good, right?
Max Christie, my boy. Yeah, don't disrespect him.
No, I didn't. I said he's pretty good.
All right.
But this is Luka we're talking about.
Yeah, it's Luka.
It's Luka Doncic, from Slovenia.
The mind instantly goes when you see the Mavs shoot up that draft lottery. You're like, how does this happen again? How do the Los Angeles Lakers, as a Lakers fan, how do they get the superstar talent? And the Anthony Davis trade made sense at the time. They got a good haul for it. That was a normal trade. But twice now, a team has traded their superstar to Los Angeles. NBA's seen the ratings, and then, we see that team that gave away that superstar jump to the top of the lottery. It instantly raises questions.
So what are the questions?
Questions are, who are we rigging this? Take it back to, I forget the year with Ewing when he was drafted, but that was the first. That was the first year that sounds right. Yeah, that was the first year of the draft lottery. And they created that essentially to bring a superstar talent home to New York. So the NBA draft lottery definitely raises some questions.
I think my instant reaction, just because like I'm a contrarian, so I like going against like what everybody's saying. But when people go like, oh, it was rigged, there was a 2% chance they would win. It's not like infinitely small. It's relatively like it's not that crazy. But I think
no, it's not.
When you start combining it with some of the other stuff that have happened,
I think the
trade for them to win Zion Williamson the year after, it just seems like I'm not the conspiracy theorist, but it seems too convenient.
And the shadiness of the Luka Doncic trade, nobody other than the Lakers were allowed to make an offer. No team was told about this. Only about 5 people in total knew about this in the whole league. I mean, for a superstar of that magnitude to be traded like that, it's it was fishy to begin with, and then you have this data point to add on to it, and it's only gonna, raise more questions.
Yeah, because you remember when Zion got drafted after they traded AD. Like you said, the AD compensation I thought was definitely
fair trade for sure. Fair trade.
Yeah. It was like what, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and a bunch of firsts.
Yeah, Ingram, Lonzo, Josh Hart, a bunch of firsts. So
yeah.
But and it's a shame this lottery news too, because it's kind of overshadowing, one of the best NBA playoffs we've seen in a really long time. We had amazing first round series, really letting them play physical ball. It feels like the first time in a long time, and that's kind of been my gripe with the second round actually is, I don't think they're allowing the level of physicality they were in round one. We watching that Houston Warriors series, and the Rockets weren't even close to the better basketball team, but they were playing football out there, and that was throwing the Warriors off their game. So, I wish they would let them, bring that physicality back a little more. But it's been good to see.
Yeah, I haven't been watching. I'll take your word on it.
Yeah.
No, it's
cool to see the Knicks.
Maybe. How do you feel about the Knicks? I think the series, the game. What is it? Game 5 going on right now.
Yeah. So, Game 5 between Indiana and Pacers going on right now. Pacers up 3-1. again, crazy Cavs, one of the best regular season teams this year, and they had some tough injury luck, but the Pacers again, a team nobody really expected to be where they're at, and they're on the verge of, making the Eastern Conference Finals. And then, obviously on the flip side, those Knicks, I mean, nobody expected this, even delusional Knicks fans would have told you they're losing this series. So, it's crazy to see. And then, you see JT go down with that Achilles. You never like to see a guy go down with that kind of injury. But, Knicks have been fun to watch. And, if I'm kind of rooting for the Knicks just so I can say I saw a Knicks championship in my lifetime, because I know damn well it ain't going to happen again.
Yeah, I don't even think your dad can say that. The Knicks championship.
Yeah, exactly.
I think last time they won, they had what was that Princeton dude's name? Bill Bradley was like
Bill Bradley, yeah. Clyde or Walt Frazier.
Clyde Drexler.
No, Walt Frazier.
Walt Frazier. We're talking about like the 70s. Like this is oh my god. Yeah, it's been a while. Definitely
they haven't
the
even
culture. Like this is the kind of stuff that's good for the league. Like
100%.
I hate to say it, like as good a player as like say Shai is. I don't even know how to say his name. Shai SGA.
Yeah.
Does the world care about the Thunder?
No.
Like it's just such a shame because no matter how good those teams are, like even when Kevin Durant was there, it wasn't really the Thunder they were fans of. It was really Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Like, they had good basketball teams. It was never the brand.
Yeah, I think those teams, like draw a lot of fans being small markets. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people by nature root for them compared to the Knicks, but the Knicks are obviously the Knicks, the Lakers, the Celtics. Those are what, draws the views.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm even like the one thing that the NBA has over, say, football. Really, football is the international appeal.
Yeah,
so
100%. Yeah,
so you talk you walk up to a Chinaman in like Tiananmen Square and you ask them like where Oklahoma City is. They don't fucking know where Oklahoma City is, but they know that you tell them about the Knicks and they go, "Oh, Madison Square Garden." They know exactly.
Yeah.
They might not know a single player on their roster. They probably couldn't name a player since like Carmelo, but they still know the Knicks and they know the Knicks logo.
Yeah, that's true.
Same deal with the Lakers. That's why having a guy like LeBron and then now Luka, like just massive for the league. So I'm going to try to tie this back into the lottery because that's what we started talking about. What was the point I was going to try to make? Yeah. So a lot of people think that this was fixed, right? Like these are the fans talking about it being fixed.
Yeah.
If you're an owner, who got boned by the lottery like completely? The Hornets. The Hornets had a really good
Charlotte team, fell out. The Wizards fell out.
Wizards got fucked. Yeah, two teams that are awful two markets that could really use a player like Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
Dallas, they're gonna have fans probably regardless. Like definitely.
Maybe not after the whole Luka debacle, but typically they did have a very strong.
But they definitely have a strong like local fan base.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You go to DC, I really don't think they give a shit about.
Nah, yeah, I agree.
Even in the Carolinas, they don't give a shit about really professional basketball, but they would if Flag was there,
Yeah.
I think they care about the NBA, but it's really just where the Duke UNC players are doing at the next level. Not so much the Hornets, at least that's my understanding. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is if this lottery was fixed, just say Silver indeed said, all right, Nico Harrison, you trade Luka to the Lakers. We'll give you the first pick in April. Why would the other owners just let that fly?
No, that's fair, but I think it raises a question like, nobody else knew about it, right? Like, I can't speak to the lottery process and how that goes down, but, in terms of the trade, there was a reason they didn't tell anybody about it, because if word got out, it would have got blown up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, in terms of the trade, at least, like keeping everybody else in the dark was a necessity, or else that trade gets blown up. One other owner catches wind of that and they're like, nah, and then it spreads like wildfire and the other 28 are going to put pressure,
So what I'm saying here is if the fans are reacting like this on social media, fans, they have a stake in it for sure. They buy the tickets, they watch the games, they have a lot of emotional and time investment into every team. But these front office people, the general manager of the Wizards, general manager of basketball or whatever the fuck of the Hornets, they have a lot more. Their whole livelihoods are tied up in this.
Yeah.
So I understand that they're probably in the dark, but if the fans think it's rigged and they just have a little bit of a stake, I think that if the other owners, other front offices around the league, do you think they're up in arms right now and demanding, a conference with Silver, like saying this is bullshit, this is very clearly rigged? My point is I think that Silver wouldn't try to do anything like this because he should be in theory like afraid of the owners that they would retaliate if he tried to pull something like this. But I understand they're in the dark. But I'm just saying, if it's this obvious where the fans are fucking crazy about it, then I would imagine that the front office are even crazier about it. So, anyways, I'm trying to tie this all around. Theory I have is like that these owners don't give a shit. They're like, you know what? I think, if I'm the owner of the Hornets, nobody's watching the goddamn Hornets anyway. I'd rather have Luka go to the Lakers and I have a bigger revenue share that I'm pulling from.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's better for the whole league is better for the bottom feeder owners who, more or less, I don't think the NBA really gives a shit if Charlotte's competitive or not. I don't think they give a shit if Washington's competitive or not. They almost like them sucking. So then a guy like Jason Tatum can go to DC and drop like 60.
Yeah,
and they can make TikToks on that, and they can post that on social media and be like, "Oh, Jason Tatum new scoring record," or whatever the fuck.
And I think it kind of compares to almost like the MLB as well. Maybe some of these smaller NBA markets have the same mindset as these smaller MLB markets. That at the end of the day, it's really not about winning. You know what I mean? It's about making a profit. Like they don't these Marlins. These other they don't care about winning. They prove it time and time again. They trade guys with 4 or 5 years left on their deal, recycle the farm, try and bring in new hype, Then when they have a good team and they accumulate the farm, they might try and compete for a year or two, but they're never going to make any splash moves. So it makes you question maybe some of these smaller market NBA teams really that's all it's about too. It's not about building a competitor or anything like that.
So we have a question from Walt here.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Walt.
Have we investigated mail-in lottery fraud? It was the deep state.
Yeah. That's a good question, Walt. My next meeting with Silver, we'll go over it and discuss, removing that.
Yeah. So, I guess. I don't know how else to go on about. I was trying to think of jokes about mail fraud.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
I think Walt pretty much made the whole joke. Like there was no piggybacking off of that. That was good stuff. Yeah. So like I don't know. I didn't think it was rigged. I'm not really like a big conspiracy theorist. I'm just like I think there's a small chance that it would. And then obviously because that happened, people are clinging to narratives. If some other team won the lottery with very long odds and all of a sudden, oh, 100%. Adam Silver's daughter is married to Rob Pelinka's, like, I don't know, someone, there's find some random connection. Yeah. I understand, but this is like why, like, I'm not 100% sure is because obviously the Luka trade was so fucking weird when it happened.
Yeah.
Like,
made
no
so
sense.
Much shade. Yeah.
Just out of nowhere. So.
Yeah, and both options are obviously entirely possible. We'll never know. You know what I mean? Maybe when we die, I guess. But
yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe that's what I want.
That's my first. I don't even
know who's that. Heaven's Gate. St. Paul. I don't know. St. Peter.
I don't know. Yeah, that's gonna be my first question.
Jesus.
Did Adam Silver rig the 2025?
I'd rather know about Ewing, but I feel like we already know about Ewing.
Yeah, Ewing's just like way too shady.
So the league never has a lottery ever. It's not even like an idea that they have.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this Georgetown has a really good player. Let's start a lottery.
Hey, the Knicks have sucked for 40 years. That's
And they still didn't do shit, which is crazy.
Yeah, they made a conference finals. That's it. They couldn't even make the finals here. No, they didn't make a finals. Ewing missed the turnaround to win it in Game 7, right?
Who represented the East the year Jordan wasn't playing? In between.
The Magic, wasn't it? Wasn't it young Shaq?
Yeah, it was Magic.
And then they got whooped by Hakeem's
Houston.
Rockets.
I think Houston swept them. I think
like old Hakeem's Rockets. Yeah.
All right, so we can't talk about conspiracies anymore. Our question is from John Sanford. How well
Nice,
does Flag fall into Mavericks' game plan? Are they year one contenders next season? I don't know. My experience with Cooper Flag, I'll tell y'all straight up, I don't watch college basketball. I was absolutely blasted during the Final Four at the Houston game, and bro, it was like I said, it was like I saw Peter the Great or whoever the guy at the thing was. It was like white Jesus was on my screen at the bar.
He's been
like the kid offensively, everything looks very easy to him. Me being a football guy, it's more about like the athleticism, I guess. I don't really know shit about like basketball fundamentals, but just watching how easy he moved. I don't know if you could speak to Cooper Flag.
I mean, I'm not a draft expert by any means, but he's definitely got a real feel for the game, and when you pair that with his size, his length, his skill, his defensive prowess, really, you have a true all around star, that can be the face of a franchise, and he's a mold I really like, a guy that, doesn't necessarily have to, get his own shot first, right? He has a real feel for the game. And in terms of the Mavs, I mean, they're gonna be a good team next year, right? They'll have their stacked front court. They have some young guards, but Kyrie's injury this year kind of throws a wrench in things. And the Mavs are in a tough spot too because they only have like one or two of their first round picks the next, plus the Lakers won next 5-6 years, so they really don't have draft capital built around. So, in my opinion, it almost might be smarter to use this as an opportunity to embrace the youth movement, right? And try and move some of your older vets for some picks and some young guys and see what you can do with Flag as the face instead of, trying to force a contender right now in Flag's early years. So that's my take on the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, I was pissed off. I'm pissed off still because it's kind of confusing. I forget exactly.
It's a bad spot for him too.
You think so?
I think so. I really do. He's coming into a franchise that just lost its superstar. It's still a shit show. Obviously he's going to provide them some much needed stability, but there was just, I think they're fit wise and, drama wise, there was just so many better places I think he could have went.
Well, I'll tell you why I was pissed, because I know the Nets definitely got first round picks for Kyrie Irving. I just don't remember if they ended up trading him back to, they had a weird trade with Houston where they got their first round pick this year back.
Yeah.
So it was like a weird swap. I forget exactly how it worked. Yeah. And, me being the host, I should know that, but I'm also like, we're talking about fucking 16-year-old football players 20 minutes ago. Now we're talking about Nets draft compensation. That's fuck you. Go fuck yourself. Doesn't matter. But the Nets kind of got fucked because they traded all these picks for their pick back. Not all these picks, but still, they did draft capital for their first round pick back.
And then attempted tank. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a chance at Flag. It was definitely higher than 2%.
Definitely 100%.
I think they were one slot away they're one slot away from Philly, who ended up getting the third pick. Anyways, what ended up happening with the Nets is they're picking 8 now, and I think the pick that they traded away was like the 10th pick. So they literally traded all this fucking crap just to move up 2 spots. You're drafting at 10, you're probably drafting the same guy you would have took at 8. So it's just like, I don't know. You probably don't want to Nets basketball talk on a Tuesday.
Yeah, well, the Nets were a better team than people thought this year. They thought they were going to be one of the true bottom feeders, and they weren't. So it's tough when these teams get stuck in purgatory. The NBA, you really do got to win one of these lotteries. We're picking one of these top 3 of one of these stacked draft classes. Or else, you're picking from lesser players, obviously. So it's tough in the NBA for sure.
So, if you had to compare Flag, not necessarily like skill level, but in terms of not skill type, like not player type, but like in terms of, he's probably a bit below Wemby, right? In terms of hype, like how big.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Like, is there a name that like you think he's pretty close to? Like he's probably bigger than Cade Cunningham coming out.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like maybe since Zion.
He's close to Zion, you think?
Yeah, and I think he's probably a better player, Flag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think, I feel like Flag's been been the number one pick for quite a while, right? You know, I feel like that's kind of been known by everybody. You know, even coming out of high school, really, it was like, you know, he's the number one guy. You know, and that's where the year where there's a couple kids out there that are, you know, really good players that might go number one in some classes. So I would say it's probably closest to Zion, and obviously Zion maybe a little higher just because of the shit he used to do. You know, I mean that motherfucker's a freak. So you know his highlight reels really pushed his hype up, but you know I think that's probably the closest.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know shit about like draft prospects, but just remembering Zion come out, I definitely think Flag is a better prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, you were dealing with a lot of injury shit with Zion coming out.
Yeah.
I don't think he was really ever that seriously hurt at Duke, but yeah, I hate to be like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I fucking knew Zion was gonna get hurt. You got a guy that's like 260, jumping like 45 inches.
Yeah.
Like Derrick Rose's knees couldn't handle his vertical, and Derrick Rose looked like a crackhead almost. Like doesn't weigh 260 the way Zion does.
Yeah.
But, like I said, I don't know anything. This is supposed to be a high school football podcast, but yeah. So, anything else you want to round out conversation here?
I think I got all I had to say out of the way. You know, we got Thunder Nuggets. You know, that's coming up tonight. It's a big one, so be tuned into that.
Yeah, I'll be asleep, but
yeah,
I'm sure you guys have fun watching it. I'm sure it'll be entertaining.